Luigi Mangioni.
Luigi Mangioni.
Luigi Mangioni.
Luigi Mangioni.
Luigi Mangioni's alleged killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Luigi Mangioni pleaded not guilty to a federal murder charge.
What happens when a broken healthcare system becomes so profitable for corporations and so lethal for the public that economic injustice drives individuals to desperate, violent acts? Mangioni's case highlights how the U.S. healthcare system, driven by profit maximization, externalizes its financial burden into society through preventable gaps, lost productivity, and rising public distrust, ultimately threatening economic stability more than it projects corporate margins.
Insurance companies have used a strategy for the last 20 years that's known as deny, delay, and defend. It comes from a McKinsey recommendation that said if you deny care, some of it will just go away.
This is Max, not his real name or voice, who worked at a company whose whole business was prior authorizations. Oftentimes, insurance companies can't handle the sheer amount of requests, so they outsource the decisions to a company like Max's. It wasn't actually Kathleen's insurer, Emblem Health, that denied her MRI. It was a company that Emblem Health had outsourced their prior authorizations to. Max was quick to defend most of the nurses and doctors reviewing prior authorization requests. What he described instead was systems designed at all times to look like they were simply adhering to best practices. But that stripped employees of the ability to practice good judgment. Instead, companies like his used hostile design to push the kind of large-scale outcomes they wanted.
There's not a whole lot of room for subjectivity in some of these tools. And so like, I can't check that box or I can't fill in an answer here. That might be enough to fail that clinical algorithm.
So I want to ask, for Kathleen Valentini, do you have any guesses as to like why that might happen?
I mean, only speculating here, but they might not have entered all the information inappropriately, or it might not have been explicitly called out in the place that they would have expected to find it in the clinical documentation, in the clinical notes.
To summarize, if Kathleen's doctor didn't write that Kathleen had already done physical therapy in wherever some anonymous doctor was expecting to see the words, "patient did 6 weeks of physical therapy," the insurance doctor, rushed for time, might have overlooked it. Had Kathleen's doctor placed that crucial component somewhere else and maybe circled it with some big arrows or not had to do a prior authorization at all, Kathleen might not have lost her leg.
When you say like they're basically doing things that are just short of fraud, like what do you mean by that?
It's almost like selective design in terms of, do you want to word this question in a tricky way that maybe makes it a little bit more difficult to someone not paying close enough attention, and then likely leads to them not getting an easy approval.
But while Max consistently stressed how their decisions were supposedly rooted in best practices, story after story from doctors highlighted a system that was comically inept when it wasn't just outright horrifying. Dr. Calderia once ordered a mammogram for a patient with a carcinoma. The insurance initially rejected the prior authorization after a worker didn't understand basic medical terminology.
The person who was reviewing this case didn't know that carcinoma is also cancer.
In another case, Dr. Calderia looked into a doctor who kept rejecting her submissions. She had found he switched to insurance after receiving a multitude of complaints against him to the medical board. Others just seem not worth the effort. One doctor complained on social media about needing a prior authorization for a cheap blood pressure medication that only costs a few dollars a month.
I just got a prior authorization from UnitedHealthcare for lisinopril. I hope the whole board at UnitedHealthcare gets diarrhea tonight.
Or get shot like the American CEO of UnitedHealthcare. Just kidding. The CEO was shot dead on December 4, 2024, allegedly by Luigi Mangioni. Our hero was arrested after some rat working at McDonald's believed that Mangioni looked like the guy, and the video tape on the CCTV footage. There are a lot of people saying that this is a circus, but we are not here to talk about that. So, what's the deal with this? The fact that an entire industry was created with the sole purpose of maximizing profits from healthcare top executives against the people's life. Let's use the story of the physician as an example. She had to engage in a stupid argument with a random customer service representative from a prior authorization company. The random person who doesn't have any sort of medical knowledge has good power to decide if the doctor assessment was correct. Let me say it again in different words. An uneducated individual has a job where he or she has the power over a highly educated professional to decide over your health. This individual has instructions to cut expenses in order to be a good employee, or otherwise he or she will be fired.
You're fired.
He or she will be not subject to promotions, or he or she even lost bonuses because of your life. Of course, they need to create some tricks to hide and pretend they are actually not doing this on purpose, such as not filing their forms in the way they want them to be filed. Therefore, they would always have an excuse to delay or for deny the claim. Unfortunately, this does not just happen in the healthcare system. It happens in other fields, such as in taxes, when you need to.
Honestly, this might be an unpopular opinion, but like the worst kind of juice is orange juice.
Orange juice?
File the forms according to the IRS standards or in the court of law when you have to file the filings according to the specific registered jurisdiction standards of the court. That's some of the value we give to our clients. Because the more you have done it, the less likelihood of making mistakes, and we know how to beat these fuckers in their own game. The huge difference is your life is now risk when you are filing your taxes or filing a lawsuit. But if this happens when you are experiencing health problems, you might die. I want to show you a video where one of my favorite YouTubers is a physician professional called Dr. Mike, talks about his personal experience regarding prior authorization campaigns.
Let's say I'm following a patient's tumor size. We need an MRI to see how the tumor is behaving. The insurance company will deny it. I will call them. I will say the patient needs, why? Because of this. Did you get a CAT scan first? No, they don't need a CAT scan. They need an MRI. No, they do. And I have to argue for 45 minutes. Yeah. Guess what I don't get paid for as a doctor? Well, for me, I'm a weird scenario, but everyone else, time. If you're a lawyer, are you doing anything for 45 minutes without getting compensated?
I don't find that doctors will call and argue.
Most doctors will try, and then we fail. So then we start trying to hire administrators to do it for us. And that is why healthcare costs have ballooned in this country.
I see.
Our healthcare costs have doubled, tripled. Doctors should be making way more money. They're not. I order antibiotic. I don't know which tablets, capsules. The patient's insurance denies the visit because I didn't put the right code or this and that. I'm a doctor. I do science. I do the body. I don't do codes. But now you have to become like a business person, a lawyer, a doctor, all in one.
But again, the objective of the insurance company is not to pay.
Exactly. Insurance companies are in the business of making money. And in a general sentence, there are just two ways of making more money. You either increase your income or you reduce your expenses. And health insurance companies could reduce their expenses by not paying or delaying the claims. Let me show you the 2023 audited financial statements of UnitedHealthcare, United States. As a side note, if you're wondering why 2023 and not 2024, it's because they're not ready yet at the time that I'm making this video. To give you some context, the public listed companies must submit the documents by April 30th. To to the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC. At the same time, they're filing the taxes to the IRS. These documents need to be approved.
Approved! Approved! I don't know. Excellent argument. Approved!
First by the board of directors, and then they need to be revised for an independent quotations mark external auditor. UnitedHealthcare was audited in 2023 by Deloitte.
I don't have a lot of friends. Of course I'm free this weekend.
I don't have a lot of friends. Of course I work at Deloitte.
I don't have a lot of friends. Of course I diagnosed myself with autism.
I work at Deloitte. Of course I'm two-dimensional.
I don't have a lot of friends. Of course I go to the gym to disassociate from my life's choices.
I work at Deloitte. Of course I looked at your LinkedIn profile because you made mean TikToks about my company. Also, I pooped my pants.
I don't have a lot of friends. Of course I don't know how to make friends outside of a school context.
I work at Deloitte, and I'm a big stupid idiot with the thinnest, most chapped lips you've ever seen. If you showed me a tube of chapstick and told me it was a fruit, I would believe you. Not only because I've never seen a tube of chapstick before, but also because I love following directions.
I'm gonna leave a link to a document in the bio, and also I'm gonna leave the link to the page so you can keep an eye. Innovative information for the 2024 year end when it's available. Even actually when I go really deep on this topic.
Max wonders if prior authorization is useful at all based on his experience in the industry.
It's just unnecessary. There's no direct line that leads to any kind of evidence of improved health outcomes for the patients.
The excuse that insurance companies use for prior authorization is that there's rampant waste and fraud. That is simply not true. In a $1 trillion industry, the amount of fraud is a tiny, tiny percentage.
Steve Cohen has another idea. What insurers used to do, and what Medicare still does. Pay and chase. You pay for medical services, and then go chase people down who have committed fraud.
It does not get between the doctor and her patient. It is approved, it is paid for, and then the worst offenders are audited.
In Steve's vision, doctors can make their own calls, and bad ones will get punished. It's not perfect, but it's better than putting a company whose sole duty is to its shareholders in between you and your doctor. A company that, in the case of Kathleen Valentini, courts have ruled has no obligation to care for your health.
Well, thank you so much for staying at the end of the video. So, comment, do you believe that Luigi Mangioni is a hero? See you next time. Bye!